Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig and I'm your host. Today's episode is going to be all about working with a publicist. Today's guest is Krista Vilinskis, and she has been in the business for quite a while now. She's worked with tons of local bands, and she's here today to help artists understand what working with a publicist looks like, how to prepare to work with a publicist, who's ready for it, who's not, how to succeed, how to make sure your campaign is going to be successful, and I'm sure plenty more. I've got a quick bio that I'm going to read from Krista's company, Elephants and Flowers Media, and then we'll jump into the conversation. Elephants and Flowers Media is a Minneapolis boutique music marketing company offering musicians online and print publicity, tour support, radio airplay, and consulting. Krista Vilinskis helping artists to amplify their music through grassroots marketing strategies and boots-on-the-ground techniques. Whether you're a new artist, young label, or an established musician, Krista focuses her marketing services to help you reach your audience, popular DJs, national critics, well-known bloggers, and music tastemakers. Her cost-effective methods have boosted local artists to regional and national success. Please welcome Krista Vilinskis.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Did I get anything wrong, or was that all correct?
No, you got it right.
All right, good. You know, one thing that I was thinking is, like, I've really structured the episode to talk really about the publicity side, but you do a little bit more than that. And I feel like publicity is attached to everything that you do in some way or another. But I know that your past experiences, you've definitely had other roles and done a lot of things.
Artist development. Things like that.
That's what I mean. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe we'll touch on that briefly. I do think it's nice just to keep things focused today, but as they come up, I'm also interested to learn a little bit more about some of those other things. But let's just start off by having you give a brief background of who you are, your time in the industry. You don't have to cover everything, but just kind of the highlights and what brought you up to Elephants and Flowers today.
I started at St. Cloud State, and I just really threw myself into music. I really loved what I did. I had a mentor there, Joe McMullen at KVSC, the radio station, and she basically said, if you want to get into the industry, throw yourself into it. And I'm like, okay. So I worked on the university programming board. I booked bands. I learned about writers, how much to pay them, when to pay them. I did the design of the T-shirts. I ordered the porta potties. I did the staging, worked with the crew, really grassroots kind of stuff, and rolled up my sleeves wherever was needed. Mm-hmm. And then when I graduated, I started working with Spuds McKinsey, if you remember that, from Bud Light commercials, and I was part of the casting crew for that. And I just started working at an independent record label. The independent record label wanted to offer me a job. I went with that.
What was the label?
Orphan Records. I started there. And then...
And for anybody that doesn't know, that was here in town.
Yeah, Metro Studios, and then I became Orphan. Mm-hmm. And I was there for 6 years. I left. I started Tinderbox Music by myself for the first year. I had like 2 employees. Then I took on a business partner. I was there for 22 years. I left last September 2022, I think it was. And I started my own company. But I should mention, while I was at Tinderbox, I started a record label called Princess Records. I just would put out bands that I loved, like Jeremy Messersmith and The New Standards, bands that were my friends and stuff like that. I always said I wouldn't do a label, but I ended up doing it because I did everything a label did, right? So I did a record label. I also started my own music licensing company called Chased by Flying Monkeys. And I loved that. And I learned a lot of what to do and how to place music on major shows and things like that. And then during that time, I also worked for Game Productions, and I was a merch coordinator for Ozfest for 10 years. So every time they would come to town, I would do their merchandise, and it was really fun. I got to work with like Run DMC and, of course, Ozzy. He always had a teleprompter, which I thought was interesting, even back then. But yeah, I just learned a ton in the industry, and I just kind of found my groove, and I knew that one day I'd want to have like my own agency where I just did my, what I wanted to do with all the different aspects that I learned over the years. Yeah. So hopefully that wasn't
That's
too much.
perfect. That's absolutely perfect. And that already a lot.
It
right?
is, isn't
and
it?
And a diverse amount of kind of experiences working
Sure.
for a label and really through that studio, right?
Right. There were 3 recording studios, Studio A, B, and C. The bigger room having like, the bigger sessions, of course. Like Tommy Tucker Sr. used to be in there a lot. Donny Osmond was there, Semisonic, Trip Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, I love that band.
Yeah. To then starting up Tinderbox, which again, if people don't know, what was Tinderbox? What kind of company?
It was also similar to, it was like everything a record label did, but it wasn't a record label. It was PR, it was radio, it was press, it was licensing, and then eventually got into Spotify playlisting, which is something I work with very closely now too with, Elephants and Flowers Media.
Yeah. So then you branched out. You got your own thing now with Elephants and Flowers.
Yes.
Along the way, plenty of other little things that maybe will come up, maybe won't. But
yes.
I think all that's great. So how long have you been doing Publicity then?
I would say 30 years now. It's a long time. Like I have worked with so many various bands. Like I remember working with Tina and the B-Sides when Tina was first in that band decades ago. And now she's been so many different transformations. Like she just put out a jazz album, but it's so great. I just saw her do an interview at the state fair and a woman asked her on air, how long have you been doing this? And she said 40 years. And I thought that's got to be true because it's been 30 for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Again, just as a background.
Yeah.
Name some of the notable artists that you've done Publicity for.
I always say I work with a lot of baby bands, and that's actually kind of my specialty. I really like nurturing them from the start, but like Lizzo was probably my biggest band I ever worked with. And it was her first band that I absolutely loved, The Chalice, and then it became Girl Party without the vowels, and then it was Lizzo Bangers, and then she became Lizzo and all that. But a lot of baby bands. So just bands that you remember from decades ago, I've probably worked with them, literally. So like I said, it was, the New Standards are a bigger band, but like I'm trying to think of bands like Nine Tomorrows. I worked with your band years ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
Elvis Starr was another one, Small Cities, bands that were small bands that became big, but just, I would just help them locally get to the next level of whatever it was their needs were.
Yeah.
Promo kits is a big thing. I help them get the EPKs together.
Yeah.
Kind of help them think about branding and how they want to put themselves out there.
And that's all the stuff we're going to get into here shortly.
Yes.
Okay, so let's dive into the meat of the episode.
Okay.
If you were to sum it up, what is the role of a publicist?
I would say definitely thinking about the bigger picture. So many times bands put an album together, but they don't think about the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into it when they're in the studio as when they're releasing. Sometimes they get done with the album and they're just so excited. They just want to drop it immediately and have their show within a month or a couple weeks. But I think I spend so much time trying to get them to step back for a hot second, think about the album, think about the singles that speak to you. Not necessarily, sometimes the bands are too close to the single. So I actually ask their producers or their engineers who are close to it, but in a different way, right? So like Kevin Bowe, I'm going to use him as an example. I love him. He could tell you, honestly, out of all these songs that we just did, I think track 5 or 6 is your best foot forward for sure. I appreciate that because that's helpful, having a couple suggested singles that we can pitch prior to. And then I always try to get them to back up, think about releasing it strategically. So maybe one single a month here, next month, another one. Like when I worked with the Suburbs, a good example is I met with their management in April, and in May, we had a video and a single. And in June, we had a video and single. July, we had a video and single. And then the first week of August was their CD release in the main room. It was a very strategically planned out way to drop it. Also, they had all their promo assets done in advance, so we could drop those things accordingly on the set dates that we had planned. So many times when bands don't plan it, that's when it can be like a tree dropping in the middle of the woods. Nothing really happens. You have to think about it in advance. Otherwise, you might be disappointed. One of the biggest things I can say is I was trying to think about this today, how I wanted to say this to you. I just want bands to think about releasing it the way that they record it almost, because you spent so much time and you love it. And I know you're so excited to get it out there, but take that time to think about your timeline and getting those promo assets together while you're recording or shortly after. Don't wait last second.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things I think I run into with, it stresses me out, it stresses the DJ out or the critic, is not giving them the ample time for it to be heard. They need to get it, open it, listen to it, decide what they're going to do with it. I feel like I'm always chasing my tail. Like I'm always trying to say, slow down, let's get it to them, let them open it and have time to review it. It's really stressful when I'm like, hey, this is a really killer album or single or EP, but will you play it like next weekend on your show? They already know what they're covering a month out. You know?
Yeah.
It's just like you in the studio.
Preparation is got to be probably one of the trickiest things to manage for you. And I think that's the case for a lot of different things that people try to do. They don't give themselves enough time.
Yes.
But let's hold off on that for a second.
I know. It's so hard for me because I want to jump into the meat and potatoes.
I know that's a big point, and so reiterating it again and again throughout this episode is probably just fine.
Right.
But I don't really quite think you answered my question yet, which is,
go for it.
What does a publicist do?
Oh.
Now, there's strategy, yes, and that's a big part of it. But in some ways, that can be done on multiple levels. A publicist might be a part of that strategy, but their management might be a part of that, and the band's desires. But like your everyday, what is it that you do? I
love that you asked that, and you kind of said it to me in a way that you really made me stop and think, okay, I'm like a mother, honestly, to a child, and not saying that bands are for children. It's just that I'm overseeing the aspect of everything and how it should be presented and delivered out to the world, right?
Yeah, you're the connection between the artist and media.
Yes. I'm basically the connection, and I'm thinking about telling them to step back, think about how they want to project themselves out into the world and their music and how they want to be branded or their development of it all. I got to get them to think about it, but then I also got to get them to be organized. A mother is very much an organizer. I organize all these bands into, like get your bio together. You don't have to do, first person, second person, third person bio, but if you want to, that's great because that's extra and that helps. I'm just trying to get them to think about it. If anything, I think bands overthink things way too much. Sometimes when I do give a lot of information, it overwhelms them and then they're almost like frozen by decision and choice. So sometimes I'm the one to talk them off the ledge and say, okay, back up from this. You're too close to it. Let's talk about this in simple layman's terms. Like, how do you want to release it? What singles, what tracks? Then we'll organize that, okay? We'll get the promo stuff together. We'll talk accordingly about it. We'll kind of talk it through. I'll sit down with them and we'll plan out the release with a timeline. And we'll say, do you want to release it now or do you want to release it then? And, it sounds silly, but I always tell my bands, avoid the state fair like the plague because that's when all the media is covering. That's the only time. Avoid Christmas, of course, the no-brainer. Everyone's holiday music, fine, you're golden. Not holiday music, avoid it.
Yeah.
Certain things like that. I'm kind of like the mother. I tell them like,
you're helping think through everything.
Yeah, I'm just think it through.
Organized.
Let's get organized.
What about your specific services?
Yes.
What exactly do you offer?
Press, radio, marketing, and then like helping them with like whatever it is their needs are. Like if they want more help with social media, I can direct them to that. If they want Spotify playlisting, I can direct them to that. If they want to get more press and radio written up, then I can try to get them press and radio in town. I'll try to get them like the current song of the day, something like that. That's a big thing. There's a big listenership. The current's about 97,000 watts, so it's high volume. Or they want to do like a studio session. There's some really cool ones that I love. Like they haven't been out in a while, but like Pony Rug, they just started back. And Welcome to the Goulsons. There used to be something called White Wall Sessions. But like I'm always trying to find these like cool in-studio opportunities for my clients.
Showcases.
Yes, basically. PBS has one called, I think it's Prairie Musicians. And so they book it once a year. They'll have like a week of live bands and they come in and they interview them kind of like what you do in segments. And then they edit that in throughout their, 8 songs that they perform live on television through PBS. So that's one of the things. Another thing is just like radio, trying to get them airplay on radio stations, get them in studios, specialty playlists. Like, of course, you've got, KFAI, Krista Wax, MSP Sound Show. And then you've got Jackson Buck over at, KFAI. He's got, a cool show too that he'll play blues and rock. And then you've got Bill DeVille's United States of Americana. It's just knowing these radio stations after decades of doing it. and who would care for something.
And having contacts with all these people.
Yes, that's like kind of what we were talking about with licensing. It's who you know. And it is like having those relationships built up makes a big difference. And also kind of knowing these people personally on a different level, like having what I like to say, a bowl of clue flakes as to who they tend to embrace their genre or sound. Like obviously Bill DeVille's show is more Americana based, but there's some that have crossover with pop and indie. And then you have to think about the artist. Would this artist fit there? This artist is too rock, or this artist is too jazz, or this artist is too bluesy. You have to be really careful on how you solicit these things. Those relationships make a big difference. Like for instance, if you send bands that aren't as well recorded or established and you're sending them to some really big shows or a bigger magazine and they're not caring for it and they just feel like you're throwing everything at the wall and you're not seeing what sticks, so to speak, they're not going to answer your calls anymore. So having that relationship and continually spoon feeding them things that they would embrace is a big deal.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit because it kind of ties into one of my next questions, which is who's ready for a publicist and who's not?
That's a really good question. Well, in my book, I'm going to say everybody needs one in the beginning because they just need someone to kind of hold their hand and explain it to them.
Well, I would agree with that. And if that's something that you're able to do, then yes. But I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a blurred line between being a manager and being a publicist.
Okay, that's a really good question. And I'm so glad you're touching on this. So I think two of the hardest, most thankless jobs in the world is booking and management, but they're necessary for bands when they get bigger. Like I meet so many bands, Stephen, that think they need management, but they're not quite ready for it. I remember when I knew when Lizzo was ready for it, I couldn't keep up with the requests that were happening for her. That's a rare thing, right? Like people coming at all angles. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. When you have that many people reaching out, then I think you need that help and that extra. Or like with Martin Zeller, he tours I work with him and he works so hard and travels so much all throughout the United States. And he actually lives in Mexico and he needs like a manager. Like I see on a daily basis how busy he is and all the things that come at him. So certain level bands need it, but when you're a brand new band and you don't have a clue how things work, it does help to have someone like me to explain it to them so they understand why I need the promo assets. I'm not just giving them a bunch of homework to give them busy work. I'm giving them homework so that they can be successful and I can be successful for them when I'm pitching to the media. And a lot of the baby bands don't understand that. So I explain a lot of why that is and kind of how it is. So management, I wouldn't say I'm a manager, but I guide them in areas. There were a couple bands that I've worked with that I love, like Thomas Aban. I think he is ready for a manager, but like I never was his manager, but I would help guide him and answer questions that he had for certain things that he wasn't sure what to do with. Like when booking, sometimes there's a set budget and sometimes there's wiggle room to get more money. But if you're really new at that, you wouldn't know to ask for more and you would just take what you're given. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like guiding them and being in the trenches for so long. I kind of know little markers there to what to tell them to do. And
you just include that if somebody wants to.
I do.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just try to guide them. And like I said, if someone wants to do Spotify playlisting, I have an awesome guy. Now I could dive into that and do it. And I used to do that. Like when I had my licensing company, my record label, and I ran a PR firm, something had to give. I also got married and had twins. And so then I decided, okay, I'm going to stop doing the label thing. And eventually, the licensing, even though I loved it, it's just that when you try to do too much, something suffers. So I basically just realized I want to be really good at what I do PR-wise. And I learned about Spotify playlisting. I found somebody else who's amazing at it. And I send them their way to make sure that those bands and artists and clients of mine are taken care of, just like I would take care of them beyond. Just like any industry, there's people out there that are, we talked about that off air, just about that.
2 follow-up questions to that. Are there any genres that just don't work for your contacts, for your connections? That's a really good question. I would say personally, I don't do a whole lot of jazz or a whole lot of hard hip hop. What do I mean by that? Like I did work with Doomtree and Dessa when they were first starting out, but there was crossover accessibility there. I heard a lot of it, like The Current would play it, like there's hardcore hip hop and there's hardcore jazz.
And you have to be able to talk that talk, or at least I think you should if you're promoting it, because then you can do it justice, right? For me, I pretty much work every genre but those two. Have I dealt with those? Yes, I've touched them, but it's not my areas that I shine in. I always, if someone comes to me and they were super jazz, I would say you should hire a really good jazz publicist. Here's a good example. I work with this guy named Chris Murphy. I think I love him. He's based out of Los Angeles. He's a violinist. He travels the world. He just made an album in Hawaii. He was in the Netherlands, made one there. He's been traveling Europe. Anyway, long story short, he wanted to hire me to do PR over there. I said, you know what? Hire a publicist over there and I will help you find one that's really good. So him and I both hit the pavement looking for somebody who did what I do here, but in their backyard, right? Where he is touring. Because if it's your backyard, you know it better.
Yeah, you're going to have more contacts.
Yes. So when bands come through, even bigger commercial bands, sometimes I'll reach out to them and say, hey, hire me. I can help you out here. This is my stomping ground, and that's exactly what's happening with Chris right now. We found another publicist that I totally respect and love, and I'm working in tandem with her in England, and she's awesome. So she's got his back when he travels all of England and the Netherlands and all throughout Europe. And then when he comes over here to United States, Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, I've got his back. So he's covered, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's needs are different. It's like the suburbs needs are very different than my new baby band that nobody's heard of yet versus Chris Murphy's. So that's a very good question.
Okay. So for the most part, anybody, unless it's really niche something.
Hardcore.
Okay. Yeah. Then
I've even done bluegrass, and that's not necessarily my forte, but I can do it because it's so close to Americana
pop,
and blues.
rock,
yes.
all that's fine. Americana, of course.
Yep. I love indie and I love rock. I actually wish I had more of it sometimes.
Okay.
I've been so independent indie pop,
Sure.
bands sounding like Phoenix. And
yeah,
there was an amazing pop band that I loved in Los Angeles called Faded Paper Figures. I loved working with them. It was so fun. They got a lot of music licensing and
cool.
It was great to work with that. But then I have a lot of bands that nobody's heard of.
Second follow-up question then is, okay, everybody could benefit from a publicist, but still, some people just aren't ready. What are some markers of you're not ready for this yet?
That's a very good question. You're good at this. If you don't have a good recording, sometimes I deal with bands that don't even have an album. They'll just have a single and they'll have lyrics written, but nothing really recorded. And they've never worked with someone like you and they just did it and I'm not saying it can't be done well at home. It can, but GarageBand or whatever.
You got to be at a certain level of recording.
Yes. Yeah. So the quality has to be there and you have to be good at your craft too. If somebody comes to me and I can tell their songwriting isn't there. It's just after 30 years of being around it, you hear it, something hooky immediately. So if the quality isn't there, if it's not well recorded, if they don't even have anything more than a single, they're not ready for me. I've actually told bands, let's wait. I've said, if you wait, it'll be more beneficial to you later than trying to just get it out right now because it's not going to help you. It's going to hurt you because if you do that and they want more, you have nothing else to give them. You want to be able to say, here's my first single, here's my second single, here's my third single. Mm-hmm. You can even drop it now and then 6 months to a year later. It just depends on the artist too. Some bands go out there and they churn out the music like crazy. I think it was Chris Koza I was talking to. He tried to drop an album every 2 months. He made me laugh. He said it almost killed me. And I bet it did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he did an episode earlier this year and
I was going to say, I hadn't seen him on your show. I would watch it too. He's been in the trenches a long time. We've worked with him quite a bit. Yeah, he said it just killed him when he tried to do an album every 2 months. I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah, Chris Koza actually did talk about that. He was on episode 14 actually. And I don't remember, but it was somewhere along the lines, he did 4 albums or something in a year, or 5 albums. If it was every 2 months, it was 6. But
yeah,
I think I remember 4 for some reason, and that's just an insane amount of output.
Imagine recording that, producing it, mixing it, mastering it, getting it done, promoting it. Boom, next one.
Yeah, that's too much.
It's a lot to chew, that's for sure.
Let's take a quick break so I can tell you about my latest offering for independent artists here at Helvig Productions. As you may know, I'm a music producer located here in the Twin Cities, and I've been running a recording studio for the last 15 years. I've worked with hundreds of local artists spanning pop, rock, Americana, and all the various forms of indie singer-songwriter music. And I know just how hard it can be to finish your own songs. It's easy to get stuck in a death loop of endlessly tweaking things, rewriting sections, or just completely starting over and never feeling satisfied. This is why I've started offering a free song analysis, which I call Musician's Roadblock Relief. If you're currently stuck working on that same song over and over again, I'd love to offer you some ideas that may help. I will objectively analyze your track and offer some helpful possibilities to hopefully get you unstuck and back to finishing that project. My feedback will cover one of the 3 areas where I've seen artists struggle the most. The first one is the song itself. I've had artists come to me wanting to produce a song that just isn't great. But there's no sense in spending money on a bad song because no amount of production or mixing will fix that. You need strong melodies, good lyrics, and a nice flow from start to finish. The second roadblock I see artists run into is bad production. Even if the song is good, the production needs to match the sound you want. Are the sounds right for your style? Is the arrangement too messy? How does it build? Are you doing too much or too little? When all the supporting production elements work in harmony, the song comes to life. And the last thing is mixing problems. Nothing is more frustrating than loving your song, but discovering it sounds terrible everywhere outside of your home studio. Pro-level mixing is hard, and it takes years to master. Mixing problems may be holding you back. If you've wasted enough time in the trial and error loop and are ready to try a different approach, head to helvigproductions.com/fixmysong and fill out my application. That's HELVIG productions.com/fixmysong. I'll take a look at your specific situation, and if I think I can help, I certainly will. It's 100% free and may just be the thing to get you unstuck and back making progress toward your goals. Okay, so let's go to the next step now. We've kind of talked about the qualifiers and the overview of what you do and all of that. Let's jump into what happens when somebody hires you, what they should expect, and how to prepare for that. Because we've already dabbled into that a lot already. Of like,
yes, we have.
We need this, but break it down.
Okay.
Let's start with preparation before expectations, I think. All the things that you need, all the different assets.
Yeah.
Just maybe start by listing everything that a band needs to prepare. And then why after?
There's a lot.
Because there's a lot.
There is a lot. And I'm not going to lie. It is overwhelming. It could be. But, the more organized, the better it will be. It's something I've learned after years of trying to pitch and pitch and pitch, because these are all things that are requested of me. So they're going to ask me, do you have a one sheet?
And when you say they, you mean media.
The media.
Or radio host or whoever you're reaching out to.
These are all things that the media asks of me to give to them to write about the band or spin them.
Correct.
So like a one sheet would be like a musical resume is what I call it. So you'd have a scan of your album cover, your single, your EP or your cover, whatever it is you're releasing. You're going to have the CD release information, the date you're celebrating in town, the party. So you can kind of anchor the PR around that. A good 4 to 6 weeks lead time is ideal. If something is less than that, I often pass on it. If it's like 4 weeks to 3 weeks, that's just not enough time for them to open it, listen to it, and decide what they can do for it. So I'll tell them to wait. Also on the one sheet, you'll have your street date, aka when does the album drop, when is it streamed on Spotify, and when is it released on iTunes, and it can be physically purchased, okay? It'll have a bio. I always say less is more on the one sheet because honestly, they know what you want. They're not going to read it all. If you want a really thick bio and you want more to it, you can put that in your EPK, your electronic press kit. You're just trying to get them to read it, listen to it. Why should I care? Of course, all your social media links should be on there. I always tell bands to try Linktree. It's free. You can put it all in one place very quickly for you. Those are little things that I've learned, little stuff like that. Of course, after the album cover or the single or whatever, you list the tracks. You list how long the songs are. Something I learned from a DJ long ago, some of the stations are pre-programmed. So if a song is 2 minutes and 37 seconds and they're feeling a little feisty and they want to put a fun song on, they're going to look through their catalog to see what is 2 minutes and 37 seconds so they can pull that and drop in, whatever they want to listen to. So I always try to have that available for the DJs when they look at the one sheet. Oh, okay, this is helpful to know that this song is that long. I could pull it or I could use it. Of course, make sure if it's FCC clean. That is a big thing with radio in any capacity. Can't have swearing. And if you have the swearing, then you have to list it as so. So you'd say, FCC clean with the exception of track 5 or 8 because there's explicit tracks here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to list if are they available? Available upon request. So I'll tell my bands to put that all together in like a promo asset. What is that? Promo assets are the one sheet. Promo assets is a stream of the album. Promo assets is a download of the album. Promo assets are getting all your social media links together. Promo assets are having a photo. Make sure they're 300 DPI. I think one of the biggest things bands do is they'll put photos on their website, but they don't make them downloadable. They don't put photo credits. And those are two things that the media needs of you. So they'll ask that of me. And I feel confident in my own skin enough to tell the bands, part of the reason why I want you to create an EPK is so that you can use that beyond me. So I'll be doing your PR for your release show, but let's say you go to Duluth, Mankato, Winona, St. Cloud, or you're touring to California or Oregon and coming back. You can reach out to the media on your own and say, hey, I'm coming to town to play California, the hotel cafe on this date and time. Here's a link to my EPK. A critic, a DJ can go in and grab a photo that's 300 DPI photo credit. They can use it. A bio is in there. Fantastic. If you have a longer and a shorter one, that's great. Things that I've learned in print, sometimes they have limited space. In blogs, they have a little more space. They might take the more beefy bio. I had a critic once that liked a more beefy or bio on the one sheet. So some of my bands, and again, it's up to them. They'll have 1-person, 2-person, 3-person bio. If you want to take the time to do that, do it. Another person I've worked with for decades is Adam Levy. I love him. All his projects are great. But when I recently, well, it wasn't recently, a couple of years ago, I was looking over his promo assets and I was like, dude, you have a 2-page bio. This is fantastic. But in the same token, no one's going to read all that. Put that on your EPK. And now with his new band, Turn, Barbara Brennested has enough of her past. Savannah Smith has enough for her past. And so does Adam Levy, right? So they have 3 sections of what they did prior, and then they have one together. So I kind of look at each thing. Also, there's concept albums. Like Jeremy Messersmith, I put out a couple of his albums on my old record label, Princess. One was a concept about life, and the other one was a concept about death, an album. Chris Schneider at Star and Tribune loves to know if things are concept or not. So then if that's the case for my artist, I will tell them to do something like this, Stephen. I'll say, okay, make a regular bio, but I also want you to put a little section either above or below it talking about the core concept of the album so that they have a clue as to what this is about. So little secret, I wouldn't say secret, but just things that I've learned, tricks of the trade over the years, like implement this. This will help you.
I love that. That's so much good information and already a ton of like little tricks and things for people to think about. It's probably a lot right away if you've never done any of that, right? But that's okay. You get started. I want to just point out one thing that underscores a lot of what you're talking about, which ultimately is that when you're sending assets, promo assets to media, a good portion, I don't know what percentages, maybe you'll have an opinion on this, but a good portion of whether or not it's going to get used does come down to how easy it is to use it.
Yes.
Are you making that person's job easy?
Oh my God, you brought up such a valid point.
If you have a great photo that's provocative and interesting and fits the audience that let's say, blogger or DJ, critic or whatever, it fits their audience. It's like, yeah, that looks exactly like the kind of artist we want to put on here. And then they sample a song and it sounds like that. And then the bio is good. And there's 3 different versions of it. One is 1 paragraph and it's right to the point. It's exactly what they need.
Yep.
If they can literally copy and paste and they don't really have to try that hard. And I'm not trying to like say that, that every critic or something is lazy at it, but they have a lot of stuff coming at them. Every single day they have to do so much. So if they can literally grab something and copy and paste it in, maybe they make a couple tweaks, but if you're making it easy for them, your chances go way, way up.
Yes, so much. You just hit the nail on the head without even maybe really knowing it. So I think one of the biggest things that I deal with as a publicist is frustration sometimes with the band in the sense of being organized. And that comes with the territory. It's not a complaint. But also with the critic or DJ, I always say this, they're not lazy, they're mama hunkin' busy. I use that term a lot. Matter of fact, Adam Levy made fun of me for it, but it's so true. They're so mama hunkin' busy, constant. So I try to put everything on a silver platter and give that to them. You like this band? Here's what you need. And when I started doing the EPKs, that was a game changer for me. Like things would happen so quickly because everything is there for them to get in, get out, get what they need. It's good to deal with a publicist to be able to do it, but I also wanted, because those relationships do matter, but I also wanted to teach the band to be successful beyond me and say, if you put these promo assets that I'm asking of you into either Google Drive or Dropbox, and you put them on your website, and you can make it private with a passcode if you want, or not, doesn't matter to me, there's no right or wrong there. Just make it available. And then when you go to that town, notify the media a good 6 weeks in advance that you're coming to town and here's a link to my EPK. If the photos are downloadable and the credit is there, they will grab it. If your bio is there and you have a couple different versions and there's one that fits better for whatever section they're doing it, they will use it. But I get complaints a lot from the media if the download is locked and it's password protected. That annoys them.
The photo's not high enough resolution.
Yes.
It's missing a credit.
Yes.
The bio's good, but it needs to be longer. The bio's good. It needs to be shorter. It needs to be in first person. It needs to be in third person, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
All those things. So, but that's a lot of work.
It is.
Which goes to the other big issue, which you already spoke to earlier in the episode, which is preparation.
Prep.
You should not book a show before the album's done. You shouldn't
That's so true.
You should.
I say that all the time. I just talked to a girl the other day. I won't say her name because I don't want to embarrass her. But she was like, this is my release date. Here's my street date. And it was like 3 weeks away. And I'm like having a meltdown inside already. I just want to tell you, I feel like the train has just left and I'm chasing it.
Yeah.
And she's like, wait, what? And I had to explain it all to her. I said, honey, the media knows what they're covering this far in advance. And there's nothing that is going to annoy them more. Like there's an artist that I love and he's just notorious for being very creative. I won't name his name, but he's not very notorious for getting organized in advance. So I would have to go knock on the media store and say, I swear to God, this is the best thing I've heard in a long time. This is so awesome. Will you write about it? Okay. When's it coming out? In a week. It's like, hang up, no response. You have to give them that time. It's a respect thing. It stresses me out to no end when they're not organized and the media, they want that. They expect it from me.
Yeah.
So I have to come to teach the bands to expect that, to get it ready so that we can serve it up on a platter for them so good things can happen.
Let's just give it a timing example. Let's circle back to the Suburbs since you've worked with them on that campaign that you'd mentioned. They rolled out singles, they had videos, it was very well put together.
Very methodical.
So,
and I
obviously you probably don't know all of the dates and stuff, but just take a guess at how in advance was the album done?
Yes.
The video done?
It's a good
before
question.
They even came to you to start then talking about how the press is going to be done.
Yep. One of the first things I do actually, Stephen, when a band reaches out to me cold turkey is I send them, I said, okay, give me your email. If it's like through social media, I'll say, give me your email. I'm about to fill your inbox with things because I want them to read through and understand. So I'll say, what's successful for a press campaign? What can you expect? These are the things, and I'll list them out so that they have kind of a clue as to out of the gate what's expected on timeframes and timelines. I would say locally, 6 to 8 weeks is just ideal for having that lead time prior to a release show. Having that ample time.
That's for starting the campaign.
Right. But you're saying, album
let's talk
itself.
about I'm saying the whole process of
yes.
How far in advance do you think the album was done?
Oh God.
And then the videos were done.
Yes.
And then the photos were done.
Yes.
All before they came to you, which was still 6 to 8 weeks before the release is happening.
And sadly, I would say 80% of my clients have done none of that prior to contacting me.
Which is why I want to bring it up. Yeah, let's talk about a realistic timeline.
Except for the Suburbs have been around for so long
so
that they know. They have a clue. So they did that album, God, I would say a good year and a half. And I think they worked with Kai Arns. Matter of fact, I know they did for the album cover. And so he's really busy and he was able to work them in for the artwork. But that was probably a month or two in process, right? And then they started working on videos. And if we had 1, 2, 3 of them, oh my gosh. And they don't do anything half-assed. They do everything really organized. And they were full music videos. We're not talking lyric videos. So each one was really mindfully thought out way prior. So I'd say 6 months to a year. And they also had a listening party in the basement of the Clown Lounge. And that was planned a good 3 months prior to that. So like we had all our dates and everything way figured out on paper months in advance. I work with Scarlet Goodbye, and I go back and forth a lot with Jeff Arundel and Dan Murphy about dates and times. And once the album's done and we pick our singles, and then they start working on the videos, and they know they have to have them done in advance in order to have our street dates and our single release drop dates. But you're right. It's months in advance.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, so much so with the election coming up that we've decided to drop their new album. We did the single just recently, and we're going to drop the album itself in January. And we might do one more single before that. But, they're thinking about that,
Yeah. Everybody's going to be on a different thing because some people are going to be much faster at some of this. Some people slower. It depends on the band. It depends on the project, the size of the project. There's so many variables. So there isn't one. But the point I'm making is that you should have your record done, completely done. Yep. And then you should probably have already been working on at least a video and some photos, and having all of that content put together before you even start to think about a release date.
Yes. So many times bands reach out to me. I tell them, once you have your photos done in the Dropbox or Google Drive, and you have your one sheet done or your bios written and all your social, I call it a links page, and your videos and your physical hard copy CDs in your hand.
If you're doing them.
Then contact me. And I do have a hot thing to bring up on that too. I still have
Sure.
Deep thoughts about that. Okay. So for manufacturing, especially for licensing, I went to KVSC or St. Cloud State. KVSC is my alma mater. And basically they have an old board. Sorry to pick on you, KVSC. And we couldn't even do a phone interview with Martin Zeller. It's just the nature of, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the universities, money isn't given to the arts department. Often it's usually the sports department. And so, you know, the Current has like a $2 million system. It's a very nice system. So they can deal with things digitally and hard copy very easily. But like my old school, they physically still need the hard copies. So what I often tell my bands, just go ahead and burn. You can even burn CDRs or just do a short run. You don't need many, maybe 50 pieces, if that. And it's just, I hate to be in that situation where someone requests a hard copy and I don't have it.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's pretty easy to make a hard copy if you need to.
It really isn't hard.
It's only if you have the stuff. I mean,
some people don't have laptops anymore that they can burn them and
most new computers
stuff.
don't have them. Yeah.
But a lot of the like Copycats and Atomic Discs, they're out of Portland, but I'd say my favorite is Kunaki. Thank you, Doomtree. They're the ones that told me about them. Kunaki does a really quick turnaround, really basic, like one sheet on the front, CD inside, artwork on the back. Looks professional. It's done. They stayed up during COVID. They were awesome. Amazing. And I've never had any issues with them either. Atomic, I've had a few, but they're good too.
We'll tag that for sure and put that in the show notes for people. And obviously there's Copycats in town here for just basic stuff too.
They're great because they're local. They're in Plymouth. You can go get your physical CDs.
Yep. That's
pretty exciting to get that. You don't have to wait for shipping.
Yeah, and they do vinyl now too. So
they do. Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about what to expect, how to prepare. Did we leave anything out of that we need to cover quick before we move on?
That is a good question. I think the biggest thing is remember this. These promo assets that you're getting together is for the media to write about you or spin you, or just you're getting things ready for them so that they can play you or talk about you, write about you, feature you, spotlight you quickly, hopefully for your show or your street date. If that's not organized in advance, then the boat has pulled away from the shore and there's really nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Right? So I just tell them, get those together first, and then we'll plan out a timeline and we'll hit the ground running. I think it's harder sometimes when bands are really busy and there's one poor person doing everything. You know, it could be overwhelming if the whole band isn't participating in that side of things. I get it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
I mean, the number one mistake, we've hammered this home, but we'll say it one more time, is that people tend to schedule something and then want to go do, you know, hey, this is our release. This is when it's dropping.
Yep.
Now can I do this? Do it the other way around.
Yep.
First contact a publicist and then talk to them about what would make sense for a release date. Is it 3 months from now? Is it 6 months from now? Because that's going to depend on what you want out of that promo cycle.
I always make them talk about their goals and their wants. I even made like Lizzo a long time ago, Jeremy Messersmith. I'd say, write down some of your goals, some of your things. Like random as it sounds, Jeremy Messersmith had a song about a car breaking down and he wanted to be on Click and Clack. Just so happened my stepdad used to listen to that show. I loved it. I reached out to them. They said, we'd love to have the song on the show, and it happened. So having goals is really important too, and writing that out. And with what you said with timelines and things, they really do need to think about that. Because if you don't spend that time, you won't feel like you're reaching your goals. Does that make sense? Like so many times bands get these albums done and they're so excited. Like I said, they just want to drop it, but they're not really thinking about what's a success for them. Maybe it's playing the main room of First Ave. Maybe it's selling 100 pieces of merchandise. Maybe it's getting a placement on a national TV show. Maybe it's being on tour opening for the Yeah Yeah Yeahs or Phoenix. I don't know. Whatever it is, write it out, because it's not going to happen if you don't really think about what's a success for me for this single, for this album. How do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Being mindful, I guess.
Cool. I have just a few more kind of random questions. How long is an average campaign?
Good question. I would say 2 to 3 months. Sometimes with bands, like with the Suburbs, it was obviously 4 months. But they're an older band. They've been around the block. They knew what they wanted. They had single after single they were releasing. Most bands, the average band, like a baby band, my newbies, I would say has 1, maybe 2 singles, or just 1, or they don't have a budget to do any sort of video. And so there is no video to promote, but they might make a lyric video and I'll pitch the single prior to, which is kind of nice to have. I will say this, if you make a lyric video or a real music video, that is great fodder, ammo for pitching, for video premieres, exclusiveness, that helps. Like, so I'll pitch like a video premiere with like Americana UK or Americana Highways or Spill Magazine or The Big Takeover. There's just a plethora of them out there. Glide Magazine. And it's a reason to write about you. So having a video could help you get press. But these are things bands wouldn't know unless they talk to a publicist. And I explained it, how the process works and what they want from me. And then that exclusivity, sometimes it's like within the magazine, they want it for a whole week and only their site, or it's just for that day. And then you can post it and pimp it wherever you want after, you know. It just varies, but really thinking it through, I think.
How big is the difference in terms of results between different projects?
That's a really good
when we
question.
talk about expectations, obviously somebody that's releasing their first EP and is hiring you and, you know, hasn't toured, it's just a very local kind of thing. Maybe they're just trying to get some coverage on local stuff versus, you know, somebody that is touring. Like, there's going to be very different expectations. So I'm trying to get a sense of, like, for listeners, what should I think I can get out of this? Because if they go into it thinking like, I'm going to be famous after this, obviously that's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, that's so hard to actually happen.
What does success look like? Maybe
that's why I make them write the goals out.
Well, for a bigger band, but also for a newer band.
Getting your name out there when you're first starting out. Like, sometimes I work with a band and nobody's heard of them, but I listen to their music and their lyrics and I'm just giddy about them. Like, I'll use the example Twins of Franklin. I went and saw them at one of those music festivals. They were performing in a church and I just had goosebumps and I'm like, I have to work with this band. I freaking love them. People need to know more about them. I couldn't wait to meet with them. They're 2 amazing women who've been in music. They're very musically connected, almost like siblings. Actually, a lot of people think they're twins. They're not, but they're just, you know, they were friends in college and they just happen to look a lot alike. But they're both very like-minded. They're both very focused and they're really organized and they're thinking it through. Now, when I met them, I knew that the media would love them and write about them. And I just knew it, you know, I just had that feeling. Same thing with Jeremy and Lizzo. You get feelings. I mean, but I can name a bunch of baby bands that you probably never heard of. But in my eyes, there was success for them because they got write-ups in press or the cover of City Pages when it was around because they're good at what they do. So basically, they can expect that I'm going to introduce them at least locally to the world and their music and get their name out there. I don't think they'd mind me telling you this. This band, The Customers, he was in a band prior that actually had a lot of success. Neil Young's management caught wind of them and loved him and brought him on tour with them, which is just insane to me. Then there was like a decade of no music. He got out of the business and he's back. But he was saying that he was having trouble getting gigs again and he just wanted some press to get his name out there. Hey, I'm back. I'm doing music. He just couldn't get, you know, the venues to call him back. And so I'm like, God, this is insane. Okay, let's do this. So he did a really good album with Kevin Bowe. and he got it done, and I got all his promo assets together, and he was very involved, and he did music videos, and he was, fun with them and funny. And anyway, long story short, we got him a lot of good local press, and then I got him a lot of good national press. And now he's recording a new album, I think with Dan Murphy. And that one will be done soon. And the media kind of knows who he is now locally because, they wrote about him with his last album, and nationally because he got some press. Now, if something is good, I can lead a horse to water, but I cannot make them drink. I believe in it. I can pitch it. I can get them to open it and listen to it, but I can't make them like it. But I'm really good at convincing them sometimes if I really love something, like I'll ask them to go back and revisit it if I don't think that they didn't give it a fair shake. But, I'm not going to name names. There's certain critics and DJs that are just tough, tough cookies. Like, you'd be surprised. There's some really big magazines that I work with that passed on bands that I love, like Tina Stilesky and Martin Zeller, but then they wrote about a band that no one really knows about because it spoke to them. And I freaking love that because, as a publicist for doing this for 30 years, I love Spoon. I freaking love them, but I've read so many articles about them. I want to read about a new band I have never heard of before. I wish we would see more of that. So I made it a point to find those critics that do. And I'm pretty proud of the ones that I found. And, some of them are the ones that pass on the bigger names and write about the smaller, more unusual bands. And I love them for that. So I'll get off my soapbox there.
Well, what's up next for you? What are you working on currently or what's ahead for the future?
So I have quite a few bands. I still have not launched my website. I've just been so busy, but I'm going to be launching that soon. I've started hiring some help, as I talked to you about here a little bit ago. And I'm taking on some clients that I'm really excited about. I like working with the baby bands and helping them next level. And then some bigger bands have reached out to work with them on tour support. And I do that as well. I didn't mention that before, but I do tour support. That's when a band goes on the road. So Vilinskis is an old band of mine that was actually on my record label, Princess Records. And he's based out of Los Angeles. And he's on a division of Universal Records. And he's also got a big licensing company behind him. So it was kind of fun to have this resurgent of like us reconnecting and talking. And then he decided to come back to Minneapolis to have a release show. And it went really well so that he wanted to hire me to do all like New York and all the other towns he's going to. And so I'm going to start doing more of that. And then also there's some bigger bands that are on labels that I've reached out to, and I'm going to start working with them on helping them on tour support when they come through in town here. Just because, like I said, it's my stomping ground and I'm established here. Absolutely. And it's a no-brainer. So I'm always trying to think of ways to expand. I love trying to find TV shows that just blow like my mind. Like I love Pony Rug. I think that one's really cool. Welcome to the Goulsons isn't doing as much these days, but those live ones for me, that it's kind of like a So Far Sounds, but it's recorded live. So the band comes into a room like this and performs, but it's usually just like one shot, one song, and it's like, mic drop. It's like,
yeah, those are
know
cool.
what I mean? Like those moments where you're in the room and you're like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I love shows like that. So I'm trying to find more of that in the United States, just anywhere, and expand in that aspect. And then the other thing I didn't mention before is like I'm constantly looking at the cool places to play, whether it be like the Hewing Rooftop or like the Everwood Farms or Sarah Morris told me it's the Reeder Family Homestead, but it looks like Ryder when spelling. Anyway, these are places that are special where you can go and perform. And like I said, no one talks and it's just intimate. And the band performs and their names and lights behind them. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like those special places. I love that. And I'm constantly connecting those dots, or festivals or music supervisors. I love connecting bands with those kind of people. I'm always trying to figure out ways to get them to the next level. That's kind of, I guess, in some ways managerial, but I'm always opening that up to bands like, oh my God, this is so good. Have you ever thought about doing licensing?
Yeah.
Remember how I talked to you about wanting to talk to your licensing people? I'd love to be able to connect them to somebody that I trust and like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll make that happen at some point.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if somebody wants to reach out and learn more, wants to work with you, where should they go? How do they go about doing it?
Okay, so my website's not up yet, but I'm going to get it up soon. But right now, you can reach me on Instagram, Facebook. I am on X a little, but not a whole lot. Basically, you can email me or give me a call. My contact information is out there for anyone to see. It's elephantsandflowersmedia@gmail.com. My number is also there, as well as if you look on any of my social media.
We'll put that all in the show notes too.
Yeah, it's like a word of mouth. Everybody just tells everybody. And I always have bands saying, or people in the industry, like, how do people find out about you? It's just word of mouth. I'm kind of nervous for when I do put my website up. But
I'm sure it'll go fine. There. Well, the last question then is if you'd like to share a secret for the scene. It's something I ask everybody at the end of episodes, is just basically if you want to sum up a tip, something to pass along to people that you think is just, maybe it's something that you find yourself explaining a lot, or something that you wish you would have known earlier, anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really have necessarily to do with the PR side of things, but it kind of does. So one of the first things I learned in music supervision is to have your PRO, your performing rights organization, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC done if you want to pitch. And the other thing is to have your -1s, aka your instrumentals. If you do not have those two things out of the gate, you cannot get placements. You need to have those done. That is probably the first question that a music supervisor will ask you for if they're liking a song for a specific segment of theirs, whether it's a TV show, a series, or whatever. So with that side of thing, I wish I had known about that out of the gate, like in the very beginning when I started pitching bands, long time ago when I was really young. I'd say for what I do for PR, just be mindful, be organized, be communicative. Organize how you would when you go to the studio for your band, releasing what you put your labor of love into, the same way you're going to release it to the media. Just think everything that you're doing now and getting it ready for the press is going to help you get that press and radio that you really want. Because if you're really good at what you do and your music speaks to others like it does, then having your promo assets all organized in advance will help you get to that next gig, that next write-up, that next in-studio. You're getting your music heard. That's the biggest thing, right? That's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get press. We're trying to get write-ups. We're trying to get features. And if you think about it, whenever someone writes about you, they like to end it with a video or catch them here live at this date and time. So having all that organized in advance, a timeline, is key.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I've got a free music release guide that links to some of this information too. So if people are like, okay, I need to start working on my EPK, I need to start working on my bio.
Yes.
The release guide walks you through like upload and distribution stuff, but then it also has links to tips for how to put that kind of stuff together. I know that if they reach out to you, you also have a lot of examples for how to put those things together as well, because it's going to take time. You're not going to be able to just do it in a day. It's effort.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't really touch on, and you were absolutely right about uploading your product. That's a whole thing with distribution, whoever your distributor is.
Yeah, I'll put that. That's a free guide. I'll link that in the show notes as well.
It's a lot of work.
And, just start digging into these things. And the other thing is that you can always look to bands that are farther ahead.
Yes.
That you saw, this person's getting press. Go to their website and look at what they provide. Because if they're getting press, it's more than likely that they have all that stuff set up. So you can go check and look at what their one sheet looks like. Look what their electronic press kit looks like, how they have things linked out, how they have, and then just emulate. This is just business. You don't need to be ultra creative about how your press kit looks,
Absolutely. I send off an email. One of the emails that I launch off to new clients is, hey, check out these EPKs. These are the ones I give the double thumbs up to that are just really well laid out and not too overthought. I want to bring up one other really quick thing that I think is amazing. So Megan from Kiss the Tiger is awesome. I've been a big fan of hers for a long time. I did a lot of press and stuff for her in the beginning and tour support and whatnot. I just think she's so focused. And so she wanted to meet with me and have lunch and talk about next steps. And I actually think that they're ready for a manager, And I said, first thing I want you to do is find a band that you love and interview their manager and get advice from them. And she did it. She met with, I'm so impressed, she met with Lifter Puller's manager. I couldn't believe it, which is now the Hold Steady. And she met with a couple other big name people, and she really got some good advice from them. And it's pretty much what you just said. Emulate, see what others that are successful are doing and emulate that. Because if you're good at what you do, you just have to understand the processes that are expected in order to get that next step that you want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this today.
Yes, thank you,
I
Stephen.
think there's been a ton of great information for people to learn from and
Absolutely.
to dig into this process or to refresh their memory if they're working on their second release and they want to go a little bit bigger with it.
Yes.
I encourage anybody that thinks that they're the right fit to reach out to Elephants and Flowers and see if you can work together.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. A lot of times when bands work with me the first time, they come back the second time. They already know the routine, so they've got it all ready to go.
Yes. Yes. Cool. Well,
Thank you.
I'm going to put all these links in the show notes, so check that out. And if this is your first time listening, thanks for giving me a little bit of your time. I hope that you learned something and that you enjoyed it. If you felt like it was great, please share it with somebody. Consider subscribing, hitting the like button, whatever platform you're watching this on. It goes a long ways to keeping this going. Leave a review. But more than anything, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen and support the podcast. Until next time.